Hi, my name is Michelle Kitchin. I am an over-the-road truck driver. I've been driving since 1988. I've been hauling produce for about 10 years at my current company. I'm accident-free, and have about 4 million total miles probably. I've been trained. I've pulled a lot of different trailers, dry bulk, reefers, dry vans, liquid chemical tankers. I pulled for years. I was an owner operator. Some flatbed work, mostly. Well, I was an owner operator. I had a couple friends that owned trucks, and they'd see me home, and they'd be like, "Hey, can you come and run these 2 loads to wherever?" And I'd be like, "Sure." So I got a lot of extracurricular training. And I'm also a board member on the Real Women in Trucking, which we are a 501c advocacy group. I have a picture here of my tractor that I started with in 1988. That was a 1985 Freightliner cab over, and the truck I currently drive, Kenworth, with this company here. So just to go over a few industry facts. As drivers, there's a lot of organizations out here. There's plenty of quote unquote representation. Really not for the drivers though. Small organization, grassroots, like Real Women in Trucking. We're out here. We raise our own money. We don't have big corporate sponsors. We didn't sell our soul for the money. We all drive and try to raise awareness to the public, to organizations that are at meetings and clubs and truck shows and all these things, because the general public just doesn't know. They see trucks on the road. They might know a truck driver. They might have a cousin's uncle's brother, whatever, used to drive a truck. So the driving force, which there's millions of us, we really don't have a representation. Our voice really isn't represented. We have plenty of lawmakers. We have plenty of people that are industry leaders or self-proclaimed industry leaders. And many of the bigger companies, their business models and cultures don't really provide room for a driver to have a successful career, to start here and drive 40 years for the same place. They just don't, they don't want that. A lot of the bigger companies or training companies, they get government subsidized training money. So, that training quits. Yeah, so be it. They get another one. It's your smaller, family-owned, well-established, good contracted companies, maybe owner-operators with a couple trucks, your smaller companies. And there are some bigger fleets. The fleet I work with is 150 units. They are family-owned. They've been around since 1980. They have good contracts. We don't have all of our eggs in one basket with just produce. So when the markets fluctuate, we have other things to do. But they're more driver oriented because they understand that the profit needs to be put back in the company, and a lot of your mega carriers just don't do that. You see a lot of mega carriers that have trailers that are 30 years old. We keep ours like 6 years. So right now, the industry, as drivers, we're facing stuff like our hours of service, the electronic login devices that became mandated, our lack of parking, which is huge right now, discrimination, rape cultures, not having very much diversity, or just adding a little diversity and making it this big news article, you know, to make it seem like you're diverse, but you really are just doing it not to get, you know, bad press. There's a lot of deceptive recruiting because the recruiters it's a job to be a recruiter. So that's what they do. They grab people and they tell them what they want to hear because they're getting money for each one they bring in. And the lack of training, the lack of enforcement and training. There's a lot going on in this industry, and there's really very little representation. And there, to be fair, there's not a lot of the public that knows that we're going through these things. So, you know, that's what we want to do, is get this out to the public. Now, I pull produce. I'm a produce chaser. All that means is I follow the seasonal products. So like when grapes are in season, they start, like, for instance, grapes will start down in the Coachella, California area, and they'll move north. They'll go up to the Bakersfield area in California, and they just kind of move north. And I will follow that product and load my trailer every week with grapes. Or because I'm a company driver, I don't really chase the same produce, but I stay in where produce, citrus, you got right in the valley, just north of Los Angeles, up near Bakersfield, to start the valley, or what we call the valley. You have grapes, you have citrus. It kind of goes north, kind of spreads out over to the ocean. You have an area with nuts in it. You have an area with your stone fruit, which is your apricots and peaches and anything with a pit. You have areas that have olive trees, berries over by Oxnard, your strawberries and your raspberries. You have your greens, which is your lettuce, kale, celery, stuff like that, and Salinas. And then when that Salinas, your busiest part of the year in Salinas, California, is usually Easter to Thanksgiving. And at Thanksgiving to Easter, it goes down to the Yuma, Arizona area. So I kind of follow it down there. There's a very short season in the Nogales, Arizona area where they have where they're getting gourds, gourds are like your acorn squash, spaghetti squash, stuff like that. Your peppers come out of Nogales, a lot of them, red, yellow, green. Grapes are a big thing, and so I'm a company driver, so I pick up what they want. But over the years, you know, I see it. I have a trend that I follow. But we use refrigerated trailers, which we call them reefers. They are temperature controlled, and the airflow on fresh produce is imperative. So all our reefers are set on continuous cycle. So once you turn them on and get them set at temperature, they don't ever turn off until we turn them off manually. So that the airflow is the most important in produce. Keep the temperature, but also keep that air flowing, because there's some produce, like I'll use, for example, celery. So they put it in boxes, and then they'll put ice on that, and you set your reefer just about freezing. And what your reefer does is, it's cold, but it's not cold enough to keep that ice. So as that ice melts, the water is flowing downward through your produce, and the airflow, the continuous airflow in your reefer keeps that moist. So if you ever are passing or get passed by a reefer and there's water coming out of it, more than likely they have iced fresh produce in there. And they're just melting that ice just enough so that water keeps the leaves and the green and everything crisp and not frozen. We don't freeze any of that. We keep it usually anywhere from 33 to about 36, just above freezing. But some of it, especially your green leaf products, corn on the cob, it gets iced. So, and there's different ways. There's the spot market, which a lot of owner operators use the spot market because produce pays really well when it's in season. So, for example, like the second week of watermelons in Florida, when they're first coming out, the rates for that truck, for that trailer, are very high. Once you get past that first couple of weeks, then your rates go down a little bit, down to a normal, and then they kind of drop off because watermelons, that season will be over, and you'll go into strawberries and citrus in down there, onions in Georgia there. So I work for a company. So we have like a contract. So our prices don't really fluctuate as much as the seasons go because our trucks chase the produce. So our contracts, they might have 40 loads of grapes and 30 loads of lettuce a week or whatever. So whatever truck's closest, goes and gets and picks those loads up. So we deal with buyers that actually live in those areas, and they work for the grocery stores that we haul for back in Michigan, and they determine where this product can be purchased and what day we can pick it up and stuff. So we work more with buyers, and the spot market people work more with brokers. And each customer requires different services. For example, one of the grocery stores that we're contracted to, they need same-day pick product. So when you pick up produce, you have to check in at the facility that's loading you. So, and you have to do it in person. They won't let you call. They won't let you text, any of that. You have to be there in person. And that's when they start saving your load up. So say the store I'm picking up for ordered 400 cases of SameDay Pick premium table grapes. So as they're picking them in the field today, they have to have today's date on them. And they have little size, metal size things for these grapes. So if premium means a D, then all the D grapes are going in one specific packaging, and it might take 14 or 16 hours of picking just to get those 400 cases that I need. But they won't even start saving those 400 cases till I'm checked in. So if I don't check in till noon and they already had, 300 cases, but somebody else is there before me that wants the same-day pick, they're going to get those cases before me. So now I got to keep waiting. I'm still going to end up waiting like 14 or 16 hours for same-day pick because that's the nature of produce. So every store, there's stores that don't require premium produce. They take something that may have been stored there for a week already, and they don't have like the stores that we haul for. They have like 3 to 4 day transit. That's it. That they want same-day pick as soon as their doors close. We have like 3 to 4 days to get that to their warehouse, right? So that product is premium when it gets to the store, and it also has more shelf life. So my company, I pull a Great Dane 53-foot reefer. It's got a carrier refrigeration unit. It takes diesel. It burns about a half a gallon an hour on continuous. So it's got a 50-gallon tank. So those can run like 3 days. I don't allow mine to run that long. I keep an eye on it. I drive a 2022 Kenworth. We trade our trucks in every about 550,000 miles. I ran 172,000 and some odd miles this year. That's about my average here. So I had 1 million safe miles at this company within 7 years here. So we're one of the last remaining high mileage companies. A lot of companies have gone to regional and keeping things shorter so the drivers get home. But I get home every 8 days. I run just Michigan out to California and back. So our trucks are all governed at 70. Just a couple of pictures of my truck and just inside the technology that we're using. Weights and legalities of hauling produce. So the federal motor carrier has given the states the right for length, bridge law, axle gross weight. So bridge law is when your tractor hooks to your trailer, there's a pin on the nose of the trailer underneath it. And it locks into what we call the fifth wheel on the tractor. So from that point of that kingpin measured to the center of the rear axle on the trailer, that's the bridge of the frame of the trailer. That's a bridge length. So some states don't care. 53-foot trailer, you can run your axles all the way to the back in Texas, right back to the back bumper. California, where we get the most produce, they have the shortest bridge law. So those rear axles on the axles on the trailer have to be closer to the tractor than any other state. Some people have the impression that it's for actual road bridges. It's not. It's the bridge of your trailer and how much weight is on that flex point between the kingpin where your tractor drive tires and your trailer tires are meeting the road. That bridge, that structure of that's what California worries about, too much weight in the center there. So when you load produce, it's imperative because you do have the extra motor, which is a diesel motor up on the front of the trailer. The trailer itself the construction is much heavier because it's insulated for refrigeration. Your doors are heavier, everything's heavier. So you're already starting out with a heavier trailer than say a dry van or a flatbed. So, and then you carry your most common is a 50-gallon fuel tank, and fuel, diesel weighs about 7.7 pounds per gallon. So when you load produce, you have to know how to load it. You have to, with the reefer mode, here's how I commonly load it. I load a single pallet in the very front, and then I have them two pallets side by side, and then another single pallet, and then we call it pinwheeling. You put one sideways, one lengthways, and you reverse them all the way to the back. Because, say, we'll use grapes for an example. Grapes, the first pick of a grapevine, those grapes are a lot lighter. They have, they're not as big. They're a lot lighter. So I can load 22 pallets of table grapes the first week they come out. And progressively, as the weeks go on, each one of those skids weighs about 2,000 pounds. They're pretty much set up the same way for grapes. I have a picture, next slide here, of the grapes. In the in the right-hand corner here, the purple boxes, those are grapes, and they're primarily loaded pretty basically the same. So at the beginning of the season, I can get 22 skids in and weigh on the left here, the yellow cat scale. That's actually a load of grapes. I can get by. I can just get by. By the end, within 3 months' time, I can only load 21 skids of grapes because that 2,000 pounds per skid, that's how much the grapes have turned from a water base in its flavor to a syrup base, which is much heavier. And your grapes are, don't want to say juicier because they're juicier really when you bite into them when they're more water based, but they're sweeter towards the end because they have more syrup, but they're also heavier. So if you just step into produce today and you don't know anything about produce, scaling these things, it's crazy because people just don't know how to load them. You have to secure them. The one picture here, you see, that's a mixed veg trailer, so it's got all different kinds of things. So it's really hard. You have to kind of talk to the guys loading you to know what you're loading. So there's carrots. You can see carrots there. Those are really heavy, and they normally go in the front, but that's just a partial skid. So I'm okay with it on the back. But you want your heaviest stuff in the nose of your trailer. It rides better, keeps the product safer, and you can scale it easier. This other picture here is citrus. So they all pretty basically the same. Those are sideways. The grapes are loaded straight in. The scale ticket, because the states regulate our weights and we have scales go through in almost every state, a commercial vehicle, to use the common numbers, is 80,000 pounds. So your steer axles in the front can be 12,000 or a little bit above, based on your tire size and tire rating. And then your tractor drives, which are the two set of axles there on your tractor, that can be 34,000, and so can your trailer. So you can adjust your steer weight and your drive trailer weight. You can move those around a little bit you can move your fifth wheel, and that throws about 600 pounds per hole that you move it onto another axle. So you can adjust that weight. Now your trailers, the different trailer manufacturers, different size holes, different size spacing, they're different. You got 400 pounds, you got 200 pounds, and kind of some of them in between. They're the new trailers that are lightweight. You kind of have to learn your trailers. All of ours are spec the same, so ours are all the same, which each hole is 404 pounds. So you can move those to move that axle weight. And this example that I have here, I moved a little bit to my drives, and I went on 300 pounds over gross. But if you have an auxiliary power unit, which is an APU on your tractor, you're allowed 400 pounds as long as it's a working APU on over your gross, because those are added onto a manufactured truck frame, and the government really wants you to use those because that cuts down on our idling. We can use those for heat and microwaves, auxiliary power. So we don't have to idle run the truck engine. We can use those. Mine are battery operated. They're really quiet. You don't even know I have them on. Keep me very warm. They run my TV, microwave, and stuff. But when it comes to air conditioning, the battery ones just don't last. They just couple hours, and if it's 110 in Phoenix, it's done. You know, I have to idle. But going back to the weights and measures, So if you're new to the produce and your customer, they're buying, they want what they bought, pretty basically, right? Potatoes are one of the very few that loads by the pound, so they run those right up to, your company wants you to put $79,999 on there, right? Anything else, I always try to get what they ordered. I don't want to cut a whole skid, 2,000 pounds, take the whole skid off. If we can get away with just taking a few boxes, because these scales, I mean, you have to be legal, but you also have to know what you're doing. Here's another page of examples. The ones with the airbags, those are melons, cantaloupes, I believe they are. And those are cantaloupes are they're hard to secure, so they airbag them for us. We check on them a lot on the way back we get a lot of those near Brawley, California down there. The plastic cases over here, that's iced lettuce for a food source that deals with mostly restaurants. So that's like loose leaf lettuce. So they just want it kept moist, and that's why they're in the plastic cartons. The other one's just your basic food service trailer with different varieties of stuff in it. This trailer here, that is a trailer of roses. We picked those up a couple times in the spring. There's a plant. There's a time when plants run really hard out of California, Lower California, around the Phoenix area still has a lot of roses. So those are roses, and we'll bring back a few trailer loads of those. Those are hand loaded. They're just single rose bushes. They're hand loaded, and they hose them down. I run the reefer at about 50 degrees or 55 degrees, and just to keep them moist. And they've hosed that trailer down like crazy. And then I bring that up, and you can see there's snow on the ground. So it was like in March in Michigan when I brought that back. And they have people that take those, and they take one at a time, and they put it in a box of soil. And like maybe Menards, Lowe's, stuff like that, you can buy like a rose bush in a little box with a little dirt. That's what those are for. And those are all hand loaded. They were all hand pruned to get to this spot. And then when it gets to the other end, they're all offloaded by hand and individually boxed. So produce and shrubbery like this are very manual labor intensive. Very few things. Some nuts they shake the trees. If you ever have the opportunity to watch some of the videos on social media about how they harvest celery and stuff, and you think about, when celery's in peak season, and there's, 400 trucks a day per shed loading, 25 skids, pallets of this. Think how labor intensive that is, manual labor. I mean, it's crazy, the amount of produce, because when it's ready, it has to be picked. They don't have this opportunity to just, we'll do it tomorrow, or, you don't have enough people, so we'll wait and do this field another day. That can't happen. When it's ready to harvest, it's super labor intensive. It's fast paced. Unfortunately for the drivers in these situations, that fast pace comes to a screeching halt when we go to get loaded. Because a lot of companies don't pay like detention, because they can't give you an exact time when that produce is going to be ready. And there's nobody that can. I understand weather. I mean, there's a million things, a million variables with produce that would cause a delay in getting your truck loaded. Um, but there's so many, the large fleets just don't pull very much produce because it's a niche. You know, the person doing it, you have to know you're going to have to scale. You're going to have to move your wheels. You're going to, almost every dock you back into to load, they want your wheels back because they're, especially in California, they're pit docks. So you're backing way down low. And if you don't put your wheels all that back, your trailer doesn't reach the dock plates. And it's safer to have them back, honestly. So there's these, it's a practice that a person gets into, knowing where you can get a nap because you're going to be there all day, knowing where you're going to be able to get food or carry food because you know you're going to be out in the middle of a great vineyard. You know, you could be waiting all day. So, you know, up until COVID, the driver was completely responsible for the temperature of the product being loaded because it has to be at whatever the buyer bought. So say my customer wants his lettuce brought to him at 35 degrees on a trailer. When I pick that up, that lettuce has to be, when it goes from their warehouse into my trailer, it has to be 35. It has to temp at 35. That wasn't the case years ago. Today it is. And prior to COVID, the driver was responsible for standing in that, I don't know, 32-degree warehouse for, could be 2 hours, 4 hours, however long it takes them to go back and get skids and build skids and stuff of your produce, waiting on these guys because you had to make a count. You had to check the temperature of the product. You had to look for cosmetic issues, and none of that, because of COVID, most of this, and because this is food, none of these warehouses, very few of them that open back up, which to me, other than the restrooms and running water and stuff, a lot of them do have outhouses, but to me, that's been a blessing because I'm not a farmer. I'm not a buyer. I can say that lettuce was at 35 when I temped it, but how do you prove, you know what I mean? So I was made responsible for something that I don't really have the knowledge. You know, I don't know if grapes are supposed to have white spots. I mean, I do now, but I'm just saying. So, you know, so in a lot of these places now, we had the Food and Drug passed a law a few years ago about trailer washouts and stuff that haul food, and we a tag system, and we have that here. We only have one depot for 150 trucks, so we have a wash bay that's been certified by the Food and Drug, and so we wash and tag ours, and what we haul out to California in order to pick the produce up is office furniture. So we don't have any foreign matter in our trailers. If we did, we'd get them washed out. But there are truck washes out here, and there's a lot of them, and a lot of places that haul, say, meat, your frozen loads, your meat, your chicken, they have got to wash their trailers out before they load produce. Any animal, anything like dog food, any of that stuff has to be washed out. So a lot of companies, they pay for the washout, but what they don't pay for is the driver sitting in that line for 2 to 3 hours waiting on a truck washout. You can't get loaded without it. You have to have that tag. You have to have a washout slip, you know. So these companies, going all the way back to the beginning of this, they don't pay. They don't pave a road to success for a lot of drivers. Once a driver figures out, hey, you know, this company's getting over on me because I'm doing all this work and I'm never getting paid for it, then they move on. You know, that's the attrition that's in our industry. It's a retention thing, not so much as I can't find the drivers. I can't find a good driver because I don't want to pay them. So if you want to pay your drivers and stuff, then you're going to get your better drivers and you're going to keep your better drivers. Now our trucks are, yeah, produce, has its moments, and I get frustrated and I get angry, and anybody that hauls produce does. But in return, I have excellent equipment. Very rarely do we have breakdowns. It is, he has it set. When new models come out, our president will bring one over from the dealer and let us look in them and ask them if that's what we want or what do we need. Or when the Peterbilt Ultraloft came out, he had one, Peterbilt brought one over and it sat in our yard, and he sent us a message to check it out, and we did. And that we ended up getting a bunch of those because people really liked them. So he bases, the motor and stuff is for fuel economy, just like everybody else. But our trucks are set up for the driver, and they're a lot heavier than a lot of your fleet trucks. So our customers know that. So we can't haul. I picked up a broker load a few years ago of apples, and there was a mega fleet mostly doing it, and they just needed to move my truck because they had some freight someplace else. So they're like, hey, do this. And I'm like, okay. So she told me how many skids she was putting of apples on. I'm like, ma'am, I can't. There's no way I can haul that much. And she's like, what do you mean? Everybody else here is. I said, I can't. And I have a scale ticket of my equipment weight, empty, wet, the wet weight. So I pulled it up on my phone and I said, this is what I weigh empty. And she's like, no, that's not right. And I said, yeah, it is right. And so they loaded it up. Boy, just loaded it just like they did every other truck. And I said, well, where's the nearest cat scale? And she told me, so I went there, and I was like 4,500 pounds over gross. I went back, and she's like, man, we're going to have to take like 4 skids off. I said, I told you. I did. And I try not to be, a know-it-all when I tell them, but I always ask them, how many skids am I getting total? Because I need to know how far back it's coming. And so I know how to set the front end up, and how much does each skid weigh. And if a produce hauler isn't asking that, then they haven't been doing it long enough, and they're going to end up doing a lot more work than they need to. Because if I know these things, then I can just tell the loader, hey, single, double it all the way back and make sure it gets back to this far. So, because I know what my weight is. I know how much fuel I have on. So, it is a niche. It's not everybody likes it. A lot of people won't stay in it. But if you do it long enough, it is what it is, kind of. Here's just a couple of slides of the different weather conditions, because weather is a huge factor in our industry, and it's a huge factor in produce. So they got a lot of flooding up there in the valley right now in California. They're going to have more because Donner's getting ready to get slammed again. They had that bomb cyclone, and there's a lot of flooding despite California being in the drought issues a lot. The thing is that they've adapted, and they have technology, and they know how to water to get the best production out of this stuff. And when it rains like that, they're not prepared. Their fields, they don't have the runoff. Like Michigan, for example, we call them dirt farms here, because if it rains, it just soaks in the ground. There, if it rains, it doesn't. It runs, because the ground is so hard, and it's different. It's rockier. So when it rains there, and everybody goes, oh, that's going to be great for the crops. Not necessarily, and it's really not great for the manual labor, the workers that have to be there, because the farm owner doesn't care, honestly, if it's raining, snowing. hailing, tornadoes, whatever, because when that crop is ready, they only have so much time to get it out of there. Whether you're using equipment or manual labor, you still have those same, high pressure. So these are just some pictures of, weather conditions and how our options have greatly improved over the years as truck drivers, because we have all these apps, we got Facebook pages, we got most of your highway systems have 511 apps. You can use, if you ever want to check them out, use Wyoming for an example, I-80. Use that app. They got cameras. I mean, they're right on the ball. I get texts from them, and sometimes I get like 46 texts while I'm trying to take a 10-hour nap. It's like, what is going on in Wyoming other than weather? So that affects how we get loaded and how this stuff's gonna load, if it's gonna load quickly or not. So really, just to sum it up, there's variables: equipment, weather, location, time of the year. There's millions of variables to produce hauling. The burden is the percentage of burden is on the driver, because we have to load it, scale it, move it around, check in. Sometimes I'll get a full trailer, and that's not always good, because a lot of, like a same-day pick with a full trailer, that's a lot of product. And that's a long time I'm waiting for a lot of product. Or I could have like 6 pickups, which is a lot for me. It's only 3 skids here, 2 skids there, 10 skids there. And it's not that much mileage, but what it does involve is opening your doors, sliding your wheel, checking in, and then opening your doors, sliding your wheels, backing in, securing it once it's in there, getting your paperwork, closing your doors back up, sliding your wheels back up, going to the next one and doing all this. And it's not that time consuming, but when you do 4 or 5 of them, and then all of a sudden that last skid's on, it's in there secure, you close your doors, and that's the moment you realize that produce is time sensitive, and you're tired now, and you're worn out, you need a shower, and you need something to eat because you've been out in the desert, out in the middle of nowhere, picking up produce. And the minute you close that door, all of a sudden you're time sensitive. So you have your electronic logging device, you have your hours of service that you got to go by. You got to get this thing scaled out so you can get, and hopefully not have to go back and do all this again to get a product taken off, and then go back and scale it to make sure it's okay. So there's a million things, variables, that either you like hauling produce or you hate it. And if you hate it, it never gets any better. There's no magic wand here. The produce that I'm picking up today, the only difference from 35 years ago when I started is now on a pallet of strawberries, they put a bag over it, they poke a hole in it, they blow in some gas, cover that hole with a date sticker of when they did it, and put it on your trailer. And now my strawberries won't get the little mold, the little fuzz, we call it fuzz, that we used to put bottles of ammonia in our trailer with the lids off them, stick them in 2 front corners and then 2 back corners, and get them out before the receiver saw them. And that's how we kept the fur, the little fuzz off the strawberries. But now that's one of the only changes. Pallet sizes, different kinds of packaging obviously have changed, but really it's the same as it's been for many years. Some of the warehouses now are bigger, so you can go and get 2 or 3 people's product. You can get citrus and melons in the same building, where years ago you'd have to go to the citrus farm and the melon farm. So now some of it is picks up at one place, but for the most part, produce. If you're not patient, if you work for somebody that's not willing to pay you for your time, because it's very time consuming, and then all of a sudden you're in a hurry, then you're working for the wrong company, because produce does pay. And produce is one of these things that manufacturing drops off, there's still produce. If fuel prices get higher, there's still produce. There's always produce, always. It's a food. It's always a commodity because it has an expiration date. So it's not like people can store it. I mean, people can store it, but your grocery stores, your receiving ends don't store this, So there's always somebody buying, and there's produce is always moving. And it's a huge market. But the people that own the trucks that say are looking to hire drivers and stuff, they have to understand the system. If they're not paying the driver to be okay with some of the stuff that we do, then they're not going to keep that driver, because at the produce end, you wait, and then you go to the grocery store, and I'm sure every one of you has heard that going to a grocery store warehouse is an absolute nightmare. It's time consuming. They screw with you. You lose a lot of time. You don't always get to sleep. They don't hardly any of them have truck parking, so you can get your 10, get your breaks, be legal, be safe when you pull out of there. Grocery store warehouses are a mess. So you are a mess at both ends if you're the driver. You're waiting on produce to get loaded. You have to hurry in between. I mean, hurry, don't waste any time in between. And then you get there, and then they're sucking the time out of you again with low pain or no pain detention. So I work for a company that takes care of me. So I don't, it's not a physical, and there's not much physical labor to my, my end of it. My company allows us to have pets. So I got a little puppy that runs with me, little shelter dog. And they actually encourage it because it gets the drivers out and getting air and walking and stuff, where it's easy to sit in these trucks now because you have stoves, refrigerators, microwaves, TVs, video games, internet. You can stay in that truck and literally never get out of your truck hardly, except for showers and bathroom breaks. You know what I mean? So they actually encourage us to have pets for that reason. It keeps us on our toes a little bit. Not within ourselves. We call it windshield time when you're driver, because you can sit there and you can think things through abnormally far, and that most people don't, and get in your own head on windshield time. So having a pet's good, but for the most part, if you're a produce hauler and you like it, great. If the company's paying you to be a good produce hauler, that's even better. So I love my job, but it does get frustrating. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. And again, my name is Michelle Kitchin, and I drive for Van Erden Trucking. Thank you.